Firing a nuclear missile is the ultimate form of not listening. What the Strategic Command sees, at least according to movies like Dr. Strangelove, which I saw this past week on cable, there's lines of trajectory moving across a world map. The room is in some secret bunker hidden away from even one's countrymen. The leaders in the foreign country are likely to be in a similar bunker, protected from the reality that is in the air and soon to be on the ground. Thankfully, this particular scenario has so far been limited to the movies. But we have seen other instances of not listening. Planes drop bombs from such heights that people can't be seen. The targets are buildings. We cannot tell from the airplane whether the building contains the Serbian army or Chinese diplomats. Fighter jets cannot distinguish who is shooting weapons at them. Are they insurgents or drunks at a wedding party? The suicide bombers are not interested in dialogue. They destroy themselves as well as others. War is about winning at all costs. It requires self-sacrifice for the purpose of destroying others. War is the opposite of listening. Now, you may have noticed that there is some level of debate about the current war. And it has resulted in debate about the Vietnam War. And invective is hurled like grenades. In the presidential and vice presidential debates, a veneer of formality only makes the invective seem more polished. The participants give evidence of listening to each other. They look at each other while the other one's talking. Their faces react when points are made. Why, they're even taking notes. But they're not listening to understand. They are listening to figure out their rebuttal. They come to the debates with certain phrases that they plan to say, and they listen for opportunity to say what they want to say. It can be pretty surreal. The answers given are barely related to the questions asked. And watching the pundits after the debates is even more surreal. I believe that the party loyalists write their assessment of the debate before the debate. Their critique bears little resemblance to what the candidates actually said, and they always begin by saying something like, "Well, I think my guy won." At times, we have conversations like this. We cannot wait for the other person to stop talking so we can expose the flaws in their argument. We may not have a pencil and paper, but we have a little notepad in our brain ticking away every weakness in our opponent, looking to capitalize and come out the winner. When I'm counseling couples before marriage, I often warn them to avoid this type of argument. Listening is not about who wins. It's about building the relationship. I tell them, remember, if you win the argument with your spouse, then you are married to a loser. We have to listen for the sake of building relationship, not to win. Our church Family is in the middle of a conversation. There is general agreement that we should grow, and we are growing. But there is a variety of opinions about how we should manage growth, and we need to listen to each other. We must consider the issues and balance hope and responsibility. Inside of us resides at least two voices, the dreamer and the tightwad. The dreamer thinks only about what he wants without paying for it, and the tightwad refuses to dream because it might cost too much. When these growth conversations occur in any congregation, these roles become personified. They become personified because they are necessary roles. When I mentioned the role of dreamer and tightwad, I imagine some of you immediately were able to attach a name.
I saw a face.
This is where we need to be careful, because these people reside in each of us to some degree. One or two of us may manifest one extreme or the other, but we must not personalize the argument. Because if we get rid of the person who is acting as dreamer or tightwad, as soon as they go out the door, another person will rise and fill the role. That's why we must listen with caution. Personal attack misses the point. The community meetings are to build the community. This is not about creating winners or losers. It is about living a shared vision. One of the first meetings was at the forum this morning, and it went well, especially compared to the recent forum on the Middle East, which shows when we care deeply about something, it's harder to monitor our responses. Passion overcomes reason, but conversely, if we have no passion, our discussions become irrelevant. Intellectual actions, exercises, all talk, no action. I started the sermon by talking about war being the opposite of listening. I believe listening begins with nonviolence. And this week, Family Services of Winston-Salem started promoting National Domestic Violence Awareness Month with a family pledge of nonviolence, which I've included in your order of service. I include it because of the relationships of family to church to nation, that we're all connected. And these words from the Tao highlight that. If there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there is to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. And if there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart. And that is why the first line of the pledge is to respect myself. There is the point where we all have to take responsibility for who we are in any conversation and any disagreement. This is essential. When we think of ourselves as unworthy or victims or inadequate, we're not likely to listen because we're avoiding shame and blame. We are likely to deflect even helpful ideas. Or conversely, we may collapse under criticism and allow ourselves to be dumped on. We take things personally and we're unable to focus on the issues. And out of that respect for your own humanity comes the ability to affirm others. One of my favorite questions of the first debate is when Senator Kerry and President Bush were asked to say something nice about each other. After a long pause, they started talking about each other's daughters. And you saw their common humanity, their common love of being fathers arise. When you look for the positive in other people, you are likely to find it, even in something as contentious as a presidential debate. The pledge continues to avoid uncaring criticism, hateful words, physical attacks, and self-destructive behavior. Because when one's in a debate, one looks to take advantage of your opponent's mistakes. In a debate, uncaring remarks and hateful words are a technique. With family and friends, we often know the one thing that we could say that would be the most hurtful. We are wise when we do not use that weapon. Now, it should go without saying that physical attacks cross the line, but emotional attacks can be as painful as a kick in the gut, making it hard to breathe, giving us that sinking feeling in the pit of our stomach. To share our feelings honestly, to look for safe ways to express my anger, to work at solving problems peacefully. There will be times when we are angry. And we must find ways to express it safely, both for you and the person you are angry with. The best way is to own your feeling and express it. That is to say, I am angry with you. Now, this is a lot different than saying, you are to blame for making me angry. Even better is to say, I'm angry. Can you stay with me a while I figure it out? Gail and I have a saying in our marriage, say it ugly and we'll pretty it up later. This is a contract that gives us permission to be angry, to put those words on the table, because anger can make you say things that you don't really mean, or say things you mean in ways that you wish you wouldn't have. But until you say them, your mind can't think of anything else to say. After one expresses the hurt, the other promises not to hold the first paragraph against the other. It's perceived as a rough draft. And sometimes rough drafts can be rough. But one has to get through them to get to the poetry. To listen carefully to one another, especially those who disagree with me, and to consider other feelings and needs rather than insist on my own way. It's okay to disagree. We do not need to define each other by our disagreements. There are likely to be other issues that we will agree on. I know I will not always get my way. One of the reasons I found this congregation attractive back in 2000 is because you had a new building and I would not have to worry about a capital campaign. Well, here I am. 2 years ago, I thought I had a great idea for a second service. Few agreed, even fewer attended. Any decision this congregation makes will not be the final decision. All decisions are what we are doing now. Any decision we make will bring new questions for the future. Getting our own way is a temporary thing. We should not crow too loudly when it happens, nor grieve too deeply when it doesn't. In decision-making, we should try to support the relationships between people. Then new chances for agreement are always possible. Forgiveness makes this possible. To apologize and make amends when I have hurt another, and to forgive others and keep from holding grudges. When I think of the 4 years that I have been here, I probably do need to make this statement. I apologize for anyone that I have hurt. Sometimes I act out of my own woundedness. I am sad to say that I do not always act out of my strength. And I am open to personal conversation with anyone who has been hurt by my actions in the past, the present, and the future. I will work to let go of hurt and approach others with a spirit of forgiveness. There is a need for all of us to recognize our mistakes. We must find a way to celebrate our humanity while forgiving each other for being human. The last item of the pledge is important. Be courageous to challenge violence in all its forms whenever I encounter it, whether at home, at school, at work, or in the community, and to stand with others who have been treated unfairly. When we have meetings, I've seen growth in these past 4 years. I've seen people say, wait, we are all talking at once. And they stop, and then one person at a time talks. I've seen people say, we're not able to talk about that person's motives when they're not in the room to ask. And it's dangerous to presume other people's motives. It is something that we have been working on. It's something that we lifted up as one of our primary goals, to create a climate of mutual respect for each other. And it takes courage, because sometimes when something's going down, you want to just hide. But we can always say, wait. Can we pause just a moment in this meeting to remember who we are, and more importantly, who we want to be? We listen to each other, help each other, and encourage listening to others. Don't take notes and seek the gotcha moment. Let us act better than politicians. That's all I have to say for today. I open the floor to you so I can practice the art of listening.
grandfather, the father of my mother, and spoke to my father and said, "Never have your first fight." By the way, we never did have one.
Anyone else?
There are moments when I'm torn between thinking that people are so passionate about this place and the way they want it to go because they don't have anything else, and I'm kind of throw up my hands and say it's just church. And those are my weaker moments. Because what I realized in the however many years I've been a part of this congregation, I keep going back to it, is that no matter who I disagreed with in this congregation, I could still see their motivations is because they cared so deeply about this place. And it never has impressed me as a lust for power. And I think that's what distinguishes this community from other places in which I'm involved. That the motivations here are pure.
I grew up in a Baptist tradition where women just kind of generally weren't listened to, and what I was resistant to attending a union church. I was resistant to attending any church. And he told me, you really have to see what this church is like. And the first service I went to, the board president was a woman. The women weren't up there selling chicken dinners to support the congregation. They were talking about real issues and they were listened to. And I found that really, really empowering because in the tradition I came from, women just weren't listened to. And so I encourage every woman and the young girls in RE to speak up, say who they are, be strong. Because you've got an audience here that wants to learn from you, and that we can learn from each other in that way.
I took a class a couple weeks ago, and I've become an annoying cheerleader for the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But one of the things that stuck with me out of that was a part of one of the habits. It says communicate with courage. And I originally took that to mean I have to not be intimidated enough to be able to speak what my truth is about something. And I'm also coming to realize that means that I need to listen with courage, because when I know somebody is going to tell me something that's either difficult or goes against my grain, I have the capability of shutting that off before they even get the words out of their mouths. And it is so frustrating to not be heard and to know that you're not being heard. And it's so counterproductive to everything that I feel like I'm about, and I think everything that we're trying to do here in particular. So I encourage everybody to be courageous in how they communicate, because it does make a difference.
And I've long been a person who stayed too silent for too long because I get a conflict avoider. And then when I needed to do conflict, I often overdid it. Just kind of I could bust those walls down and scream. And so I've learned 2 words that just really help when they shock a room, and again, increases my chance of being listened to rather than curse words. Just the simple words of saying, I disagree. And then just leave it right there until you can form the rest of your thoughts, because everybody's in the gas. And it's more effective than a yell, because when people yell at me, my ears start going like this.
Charlie, he listened to me. My husband, as you know, is congregation in Salisbury, and every Yom Kippur or the start of the new year, he apologizes for any offenses that he might have committed, and any way that he might have offended the congregation. And as you start the Jewish New Year, every year you start out with a fresh slate. And he always does that. I've never had seen this done anywhere in any other congregation. And I told Charlie that, and he listened.
Janice?
I think one of the most empowering things, I think one of the most empowering things that I have found in this fellowship is, in fact, for a girl who grew up in South Carolina, whose parents never allowed us to see them disagree, my parents, because they thought it was an important technique for raising children, that if the children saw them disagree, then the kids would go haywire. I think one of the most empowering things for me has been this community that struggles together in a caring way. And I think it's a great place to learn those skills that you may not have gotten through family, marriage, your profession. And I'm glad that we do take on the difficult conversations.
Let us join together in singing hymn number 88, Calm Soul of All Things.